what's up guys? We are back at it again on our quest to find the new best deck in Clash Royale. Using your help from the comments section, I'm going to be trying to find your guys' best decks. And we're going to put them to the ultimate test on ladder, risking my trophies to find out if they're trash or treasure. Along the way, I'll be sharing my thoughts about the decks, what you could improve, or if there's something that I would actually play myself. So let's go jump right into the action and assert dominance. A huge thanks to everyone that's using creator code SirTag to support the channel and allowing me to do daily videos like this one. It's time to fill up our Pokedex with Pokestats Pekka Control deck. Alright, so jumping into this game, you guys already know when we've got Pekka, she kind of feels like paper. She dies super fast. So she's one of my least favorite win conditions in Clash Royale, and I don't necessarily know if this deck is going to work because it was a great deck 2 years ago, and then, you know, Spirit Goblin Hut got nerfed, Miner got nerfed a couple times, and then Pekka has just kind of stayed herself. She's a really solid card on defense, but if you're having to rely on her to get damage or get towards the tower, because, I mean, you're kind of hoping that she does since you have Zap in the deck, maybe trying to, like, reset or remove distractions, you're going to be sorely disappointed if you play against good cycle players. So, looks like the Firecracker's just going to pull the Pekka back to Never Never Land. Come on, Pekka, just kill her. Okay, thank goodness. I could Zap hypothetically and make a prediction on skeletons, but I didn't really know where he was going to drop them, so unfortunately he dropped them further off to the side, and that was well played on his end. So credit where credit is due. You kind of have to make predictions if you want a Pekka at very low HP to get that amount of damage. And if we're playing against Firecracker and Hog Rider, yes, we have an abundance of answers to the Hog Rider, but it's going to be hard for us to always afford what we want because our deck is a little bit clunky. And Firecracker, you know, it does do very well against our Goblin Huts. He's going to have Earthquake for our Goblin Hut. So this isn't going to be a standard, you know, Pekka versus Hog Rider matchup where you're able to just defend with your building or Electro Wizard or Pekka because my building is kind of just neutered. It doesn't do anything in this matchup. Well played to our opponent and cool deck from him for sure. I don't want to zap on this just yet. I am going to zap on this now because I think that the skeletons were going to be a bit of an issue for us. I think I got to go for like a high Goblin Hut. I tried to drop it the last possible second, and he's not going to be able to kill all the Spear Goblins because I dropped it up higher and I dropped it later. I didn't have the elixir for the Pekka, so I just had to make do with what I had. I think dropping the Pekka might have been the best play for us possible, but I want to slow roll my Pekka in the back, build up a bigger push, and then potentially take the tower with my Miner and Poisons while the Pekka ends up soaking up all the damage. That's what my goal is here. And if this guy decides to go in for the Firecracker like that, it's free value with the Poison, and I will take that every single time because he's not going to get damage on my tower. It's going to be a -1 trade, yet I get 300 damage on the tower. So that's really cool. If you go in for that on the other side, you're trying to force out Elixir, which is obviously going to be a good trade for you. A 4-for-4 transaction is not that bad for you at all. Forcing out an E-Wiz is... I mean, the E-Wiz isn't going to do too much. Oh, maybe I can kill the Valkyrie, though. If that Pekka locks onto the tower, I would be the luckiest person on this planet. I wonder if that Zap is an overcommitment. I think the Pekka might be able to force out some extra Elixir, though. Yes, let's go! So we force out way more than just a few extra Elixir, guys. We get everything out of him. So I'm going to E-Wiz here so we can slow down the rest of the Hog Rider. The Earthquake doesn't even hit everything. Oh, it still hit my tower, though. That's ridiculous how the Hog Rider was able to penetrate through an Electro Wizard and a Pekka because the Pekka is just too slow. Anyway, the method behind my madness was have the Pekka cross the river and then going for the Miner while the Pekka tanks. It's a little bit better when you have a Giant because the Giant has more HP, but this is still a pretty good strategy where the Pekka is just tanking for the Miner and then the Miner's HP is not getting touched by the tower because, you know, the Pekka is just soaking everything up. So against control decks, that's generally an okay strategy that I've kind of done very consistently when I used to play this deck a lot, but you know, this deck just isn't that strong. I think you have to play it extremely well and know how to play it. So it is a good deck. I might rate it like a 7 out of 10 or maybe a 7.5 out of 10. Definitely a little bit higher if you're playing against a beatdown player, but against cycle players, you will get out damaged against people that are the same level as you. You have to outplay them. As I said before, I wouldn't change much about the deck. Maybe I would sub out the Zap for Snowball for personal preference on defense. I like Snowball a lot more. Would have been able to bounce back the Hog Rider in more clutch situations. And you're only able to do that because you have Electro Wizard for other resets. As I said before, 7 out of 10. Not the strongest deck in the game, but certainly a very fun one. If Spear Goblin Hut or Pekka or Miner ever get buffed again, this deck will be really strong because the synergy is perfect. Jeffrey's got an ultimate defense Hog Rider cycle deck that he says can crush any mid-ladder strategy and double Elixir, even destroying super obnoxious strategies like Mirror, Mega Knight, Sparky. So let's go jump right into the action and see how it works. Alright, so rushing into this game, I have to Hog Rider as quickly as I can because looking at my deck, I need to find a ton of damage and early because I don't have a single spell that actually hits the tower hard. There's no big spell in this deck, so I'm going to be relying heavily on my Hog Rider outpacing our opponent's building and finding a ton of damage in single elixir. other thing that I do like about this deck is if we somehow do outpace a building, then I can hypothetically go in for a zap on top of bats or skeletons where I don't have to reactively like go in for a pre-log and then just not get any damage. You're able to get a lot of damage if you can zap away your opponent's small little distraction cards that they think are going to finish off the Hog Rider. So that is the one benefit of this deck. The big downside is if my opponent has a building and they're able to get that into cycle and they're able to shut down the Hog Rider with either like 2 counters, whether it's Tornado and Tombstone or Tornado and Mini Pekka, or like 2 different things, and I'm not able to outcycle them because obviously if I drop a Hog Rider and then they always have 1 card in cycle that is able to counter me, I am going to get direct damaged out by either rockets, graveyard poisons, or goblin drills, or even maybe just a fireball cycle would be enough, right? So this deck is definitely flawed from that perspective if you're playing against people at a higher level that use direct damage and you're not able to break through with Hog Riders because they're not making too many slip-ups and they're not misplacing their buildings or something. This deck, however, is really, really good if you can catch people off guard in situations against beatdown decks like Golem, because maybe they're going to try to defend with a skeleton army and they're not going to expect you to have zap, or maybe they'll go for bats with a Lava Hound clone deck, and then you just destroy their entire defense and the Hog Rider breaks through and does a million damage. So those are type of situations that do work very well. Just wanted to throw that out for you guys in case you ever were really wondering about, should I run a Hog Rider deck without a big spell? You probably shouldn't, because this deck does not work at higher levels. Look at me, I'm already taking so much damage right now to the point that I'm probably going to lose the game, because from this point on, I don't think I'll be able to get enough damage, since I can't break through with a Hog Rider. He's just going to go for Tesla. And then after that, I think I just get Rocket or Fireball spell cycled and I will never be able to win. So that's the difficulty with this type of deck. I'm not able to outcycle a deck that also has a quick cycle and a building or multiple buildings. And then he's also got direct damage and I don't, so I will lose at a higher level. So yeah, unfortunately, this deck just does not work against control decks at all. So I would highly encourage you to switch it. I would give this maybe a 6 out of 10 or a 5 out of 10. It's really good against beatdown decks, but you're going to automatically lose against any control deck. Instead, I would advise you to play that Giant Skeleton Hog Rider deck that has amazing defenses. If you like defenses like you do in this deck, you will love Giant Skeleton Hog Rider, and you're able to get a lot of chip damage with the Earthquake on top of the tower, break through buildings so your Hog Rider and your Giant Skeleton can actually arrive on the tower, and you're going to have a much better matchup in almost every single scenario. Agent has been absolutely annihilating every Hog Rider and Balloon player with this giant graveyard deck. At 5,336 trophies, he's also had a lot of success against Pekka players and Mega Knight players too. So let's go with Sirt Dominance. All right, we got a game against Luca, so I am ready to rush off to the races against the Tesla Academy. Is he Nicholas Tesla? Is he Elon Musk's little brother? What is this guy going to be having for me? Okay, so Skeleton Army usually means that our opponent will end up having like a graveyard deck as well. If I tornado all the skeletons, could the E-Barbs lock onto the tower? No way. Okay. No, I was thinking a little bit too grandiose, guys. I thought I had the greatest ideas imaginable. I thought I was an innovator just like him, but I'm really not. I'm just trying to make it happen for the memes. I'm going to go for skeletons here. It looks like the bomber should die to the Dark Goblin, and we're going to get Profound Counter Push. So this is quite good. I might be able to go in for a graveyard as well. The one thing that I like about this deck is I think that Dark Goblin is criminally underrated and just not used in enough decks. And the fact that you found a spot in it with Giant Graveyard works well, because a lot of times your opponent will use their arrows, or they use their log or whatever to clean up the graveyard skeletons that are swarming the tower. And then what do they do when the Dark Goblin's coming at them? Or you go Dark Goblin here, and then they try to log, but the Dark Goblin can't get hit if it's dropped near your King Tower. They can't log, and it doesn't extend far enough to hit it. That's another thing that I like about this deck. So, also, the Elite Barbarian's firepower is pretty absurd. Like, you guys will notice time and time again that Elite Barbarians pack a serious punch. So I'm going to snowball that back. I don't think I take any damage there. I did drop a little bit more elixir than I wanted to, but at the same time, I'm hoping that if I defend effectively and I don't overcommit, I can find my opportunities to get more damage, because if this guy doesn't have Skeleton Army in cycle, I don't even need a spell. I don't need anything in my deck because he's only going to have Valkyrie. I mean, I could push that back with the snowball. Maybe I could tornado it back too. That you could get really dicey with, like, if your opponent goes in for a giant counter with like a mini Pekka or something, you could tornado it into your skeletons on your side of the map if you had a lot of elixir. You could make some pretty crazy plays. But I do like this deck from that perspective. I'm going to go for Elite Barbarians because it gives me more counter push, but look at the Dark Goblin hitting both sides at the same time. I can go in for a graveyard here, and then I can snowball, or I can just let the Skeleton Army get destroyed by my Dark Goblin. Wow, Dark Goblin, you are killing everything today. This is ridiculous. I could also tornado that back and maybe have the Elite Barbarians lock onto the tower instead. Oh, he fireballed. He's like, no, Jake, I'm not going to lose that way. I do not want to have that happen to me. I don't blame him. The other thing that I like about this deck that I haven't really talked about is the Tornado. Tornado is not a card that you see in Giant Graveyard decks, and I do not think that it's a great card for Giant Graveyard, or even in this deck, in the later stages of your, you know, leveling up your cards. But if you're playing this for the very first time, or you're playing like a deck that you don't have high card levels on, and you don't have everything maxed out, because people are not made of money maxing out every single card usually, then the Tornado is one of the best cards in the game, because no matter what level it is at, it will behave very well regardless. You can still get the same interaction of activating King Tower no matter what card level it's at, which you can't say the same about any other card in the game, really. When you drop other cards and they aren't properly leveled, you're going to get a terrible trade, and you're going to be like, does that even do anything? What's up with that? But Tornado, you can still get a great interaction and activate King Tower, or pull things away and distract your opponent's units and feel very good about it. So Tornado on offense isn't necessarily going to be that great, but it can clean up a skeleton army quite quickly, so I will do that whenever I get the chance to maybe pull the Valkyrie further away, get some skeletons to lock on. And wow, this game has become extremely close. So this guy's played well, and credit where credit is due. I'm going to go in for a good Elite Barbarians here, and then Snowball if I need to, but I think both of the Wall Breakers would not connect unless he gets super lucky. That Wall Breaker should die. Okay, cool. And then I can go in for a Graveyard here with Elite Barbarians tanking, Tornado on the Skeleton Army, or Tornado on the Valkyrie. Definitely want a Tornado on the Skeleton Army as a precedence, and then walk away with a win here, because I think the Elite Barbarians should lock onto the tower and generate a positive win. Maybe not, though. Maybe I get unlucky. I felt like that was going to happen, and it just didn't. So, you know, we're getting some weird interactions out here. Anyway, I'm going to follow up with a Tombstone and then another Tornado, and that should be enough. All right, you know, I cursed myself a couple times despite not running Mother Wish. That was a really good defense on our opponent's end, but as you guys can see, the power of Giant Graveyard on offense is undeniable. I'd rate this deck an 8 out of 10. It's not a card combination that you see too often, so people will never expect the Tornado on defense from a Giant Graveyard deck. So if they overcommit and they full send in the other side only to get you a King Tower activation while you're able to go in Giant Graveyard and take their tower, there's really no way of coming back, because the defense with Dark Goblin, Elite Barbarians, pretty much impenetrable. The one thing that I would change at a higher level is substituting out the Tornado for arrows or bats. You'll have a faster card cycle, and you'll also have that availability of getting positive elixir trades on top of minion hordes. Because if you're countering a minion horde with Tornado and a Snowball when you go in for a Giant Graveyard, that's an even trade, and you have to have both of those cards in your cycle, which means you don't have a single spell for the rest of their deck, and usually when they're running minion horde, they have a lot of other spell bait. Jack asked me to help improve his log bait Giant Skeleton deck, and Giant Skeleton is one of the most underrated cards in the game, so I can't wait to test it out and see how this works. Gotta be honest with you guys, if I see Valkyrie and I see Giant Skeleton in the same deck, it feels a little bit clunky, especially because you don't have like Rocket or Fireball, so you have to get a lot of damage with the deck, and it doesn't seem like it is as offensive as it should be if you're not going to have a big spell. So personally, I would remove the Valkyrie, I would put in a Dark Prince for a little bit more added offensive pressure, and then I would also, you know, remove the Log in this deck as well, because if you're playing against a Goblin Barrel deck, you don't necessarily need Log, since you have arrows and you have Skeleton Army that you can drop behind your tower and completely deny all damage from your opponent's Goblin Barrel. So I would definitely run Bandit, or I would run Prince instead of the Log, and then I would also remove, first and foremost, 100% remove the Valkyrie and put in a Dark Prince instead. So those would be my two main changes for the deck, and I think it would work a lot better. But as is, I mean, we're getting a lot of damage, and it's looking good. The only thing is, like, even if I win this game, I could find myself into a predicament where my opponent has a fast cycle. They're able to deny all damage from my Goblin Barrel, and then I can't necessarily break through with my Valkyrie because it's so slow, and my Giant Skeleton can't lock onto the tower. Maybe my Inferno Dragon just gets shut down by another log bait deck where he has Inferno Tower to, you know, stop my bridge spam with my Inferno Dragon and Giant Skeleton. Then he goes in for distractions like Goblin Gang or guards on my Inferno Dragon. I can't get through. Like, those are the type of predicaments that I wouldn't want to be in, you know? So just thinking about ways that I can, you know, get through with maybe like more aggressive cards when I don't have a big spell. Because if you don't have a big spell and your opponent stops your win conditions, then you just lose the game because they outspell damage you. And that's like the biggest theme at the higher levels. Spell damage is king. Anyway, I'm going to get back to this game and go in for Spear Goblins here. Hopefully we can go in for like a Skeleton Army on the right-hand side, because I don't know. I feel like if you're not going to have Baby Dragon in cycle, you're going to have to go for a bowler that I can then kill with my Valkyrie. You guys are noticing that I have to keep this a really low elixir game, because honestly, it's going to be hard for me to break through and win this, because he's going to end up having pretty good counters to me all the way around. Like, his bowler is able to shut down my Valkyrie. Again, Dark Prince wouldn't get, you know, knocked back there. It just wouldn't happen. So what I'm planning on doing is going to go for like a Goblin Barrel here, while hopefully he misses the Barbarian Barrel, and then it lets one of the Goblins connect, so that's quite good for me. And then I can go for a Skeleton Army on his Inferno Dragon. If the Giant Skeleton can lock it on the tower, we can win the game, but that's also like kind of just hoping and praying that that would happen, right? It's not necessarily like a foolproof plan. If the Giant Skeleton locked, that would have been a vibe, so he's going to go Bowler again. I think I have to save my Inferno Dragon because just a super high chance that this guy is going to end up going in for some shenanigans with like a balloon that I can't stop. This is a hard matchup because he is playing so safe and sound, not even going in for the balloon until like the last possible second. If I lose this one, I mean, it's just because like someone's playing safe, you know, and my deck doesn't have the offensive capabilities. I am slowly but surely getting the lead, but he should freeze that, and then, you know, my lead kind of evaporates there, right? So I'm going to go in for the Skeleton Army, and it looks like I just lose because he played super safe. There really wasn't much I could do there. And because I didn't have the offensive pressure to apply aggression, I'm going to lose that game if I play against a good player at high ladder that has a good matchup. So as is, unfortunately, I got to rate the deck a 7 out of 10. It just didn't have enough aggression, and you'll never be able to break through control decks if your opponent plays well enough. So if you make the changes that I said originally, maybe putting a Bandit and a Dark Prince, that game could have looked a lot different. But to make the deck the best it can possibly be, I would use this deck that is currently played in the top 200. It's got 4 of the same cards that you have in your current deck, and the other cards that you're going to be adding, like Rail Giant and Bomber, are super easy to substitute and level up since they're commons. It's going to add another layer of offense with the Rail Giant, and when the Giant Skeleton explodes, it will protect the Rail Giant from any units that your opponent drops on top of it. I would highly encourage you to start switching to this deck, and if you don't have Hunter leveled up yet, you can always use Inferno Dragon until you level up your Hunter. This RG Royal Giant deck is dominating the top 200 for a reason, and I think it's the best deck with Giant Skeleton and Goblin Barrel in the same deck. Snipes, who is a top 500 finisher in the world, created this Pekka deck. It's got a destructive synergy with a ton of damage potential with the Rail Hogs, Fly Machine, and the Mortar. Mortar and Guards are some of the best cards in the game right now, and it's cool that you're using it in a creative fashion with Pekka. This is an extremely creative deck that I've never seen before. So let's go jump right into the action. To jump into the game against Mr. Aura, sir, we're going to see what's happening. Definitely want to go for Rail Hogs and see if we got the best Aura in the business. Maybe he's not going to have a great answer to us immediately in his starting hand, and then we can get thousands of damage. Okay, so he activates King Tower. Not necessarily going to be the best vibe for us, but I can go in for like a Fireball on that. I can go in for Flying Machine. There's a lot of things that I have at my discretion, which I can unveil. I'm going to go for a Guard Surround on top of the Executioner, so it's not able to hit the Fly Machine, and he goes in for a Log, but he still isn't able to touch the Fly Machine, and the Guards might even be able to body block a little bit. Okay, so Mega Minion, Executioner, King Tower activated. Gonna have a very stellar time against shutting down our piggies. But I also have Mortar, and I have Fireball, and I have Arrows, so I have multifarious different ways of getting damage, even if it's a sticky predicament, or it seems to be a sticky predicament. Okay, so he's gonna have Royal Giant. Wait, he doesn't know what our deck is, because he saw Mortar, and he saw Royal Hog, so he's likely not gonna be anticipating Pekka. Even if he's got Fisherman in his deck, he's not gonna be pre-placing the Fisherman to go and pull the Pekka, so we're gonna get a ton of damage, a ton of value. Not even a single hit on our tower. For a 7 elixir card, shutting down a 6 elixir one for a -1 trade and then getting the Pekka to counter push, that's awesome. We like that a lot. Pekka isn't a card that you can depend on offense at all, but it's a stellar card on defense to offense when your opponent doesn't have an amount of elixir that they need. So in single elixir, you're going to get a lot of value with Pekka. In double elixir, you won't on offense. Just have that in mind and realize that if you have a Pekka counter pushing and you defend a lot of stuff, you want to be going crazy hard in the paint and try to get that damage. Also, maybe we can go for like arrows here depending on what happens. I hope that the Fly Machine is able to walk onto the tower, but he had Mega Minion. Of course, I kind of forgot about that. So I'm going to go in for a defensive Mortar here, simply because I know that the Rail Giant won't be able to get any damage on our tower since we still have the Guards, and he has to go like Electro Spirit to break through that. If the Guards are even going to get logged like he did, he still has the second layer of the Guards, which is why they're so much better than playing against someone that has like Skeletons or maybe even like Goblins like this guy. I just would always use Guards instead in a deck that you need to have a sturdy defense with. I'm going to Arrows here. I wonder if I can get a juicy Fireball on this as well, and maybe even kill the Mini Pekka and the Executioner with the Fireball. So this is great. I love this. So that's dead. He's going to go in for a Mega Minion. That's fine. He also loses the Mini Pekka, and when he Rail Giants, he's going to probably overcommit here. I can go for Guards and Spear Goblins and space them out since we do have semi-form of Log Bait in this deck. It's like multi-layered. It's really cool. Even though he went in for a Log, he wasn't able to hit all the Spear Goblins because we tucked them away in their little nook and cranny. Even if you go in for an Executioner plus Tornado, that's a ton of damage. Still a lot of stuff that you have to worry about. So despite this guy having great defenses, it's not enough to stop everything that we have. I might be better off going in for a Pekka here than playing very aggressive with the mortar, because if he goes in for a Royal Giant, it would go right into the mortar. So this is our opportunity to find a pretty good place. Oh, he misses it. He just whiffed, so he's got to go Goblin. So I can make a prediction with arrows and then get the Pekka onto the tower. This doesn't happen very often, but look at that. The Pekka pouncing. When she hits the tower, it's a monumental amount of damage. It's an occasion that you better celebrate. And that mortar is about to celebrate with a pop-off on the tower, unless he wants to go in for lightning and prolong the game a little bit longer. But you can be my guest, brother. You will eventually succumb to defeat because the mortar is inevitable. GG, well played, and peace out, buddy. So I would definitely rate this the best deck of the day. I'd rate it an 8.5 out of 10. Having multiple layers of defense with guards, spear goblins, and Pekka and mortar, make sure that you can defend almost any crazy shenanigans that ladder throws at you. And if you wanted to change it up a little bit, you could run fire spirit instead of spear goblins. It's probably a little bit more annoying for just one elixir. And if you were making that change, I would make the cycle even faster by subbing out arrows for snowball. But the deck works perfectly fine as is, and I love the creativity here. It's not every day that you see a unique Pekka deck actually working well. Snipes' Royal Hog's Pekka deck was the most well-rounded and best deck of the day, coming in as today's treasure. Let me know down below in the comment section if you guys have any other decks that you want me to try out in the future. Like if you enjoyed, subscribe for more daily videos, and have an awesome rest of your day.